You make $300 million throwing punches. 20 years later, you're working as a greeter at a casino. How does this happen? The brutal truth is that retiring from boxing isn't the victory lap most people imagine. It's often the beginning of a nightmare that makes the beatings in the ring look merciful by comparison. Picture this. You're 35 years old. Your body has absorbed thousands of punches. Your bank account should be set for life. Instead, you're sitting in a lawyer's office filing for bankruptcy while your brain slowly deteriorates. This is the reality for a shocking number of professional boxers. We're talking about champions, household names, fighters who once had the world at their feet. Mike Tyson earned over $300 million during his career. $300 million. By 2004, he had accumulated more than $38 million in debt, and bankruptcy was his only option. Evander Holyfield pulled in over $250 million in prize money. He was forced to auction off his Olympic medals, his championship rings, even the gloves he wore in historic fights. His mansion, a 109-room estate he bought for $20 million, sold for $7.5 million. It wasn't enough to cover what he owed the bank. Leon Spinks turned $4.5 million in career earnings into a $500 wardrobe and a job at McDonald's. Joe Louis, one of the greatest heavyweights in history, ended his days as a casino greeter in Las Vegas after the IRS crushed him with tax debt he could never escape. You're probably wondering how someone blows through millions of dollars. The answer isn't as simple as bad spending habits, though that's certainly part of it. When you win a fight and earn $5 million, you don't actually get $5 million. After taxes, manager fees, trainer cuts, promoter percentages, and camp expenses, boxers typically keep only 30 to 40% of their gross purse. That $5 million shrinks to maybe $2 million before you even touch it. But here's where it gets worse. A boxer's career at the elite level spans maybe 8 to 15 years if they're lucky. During that window, they might fight once or twice a year at the top. The gaps between fights can stretch 12 to 18 months. During those gaps, the expenses don't stop. Training costs continue. Living expenses pile up. The entourage still needs to be paid. This creates a structural trap where massive, irregular payments encourage equally massive immediate spending. There's no players' union in boxing. Pension plans don't exist for most fighters. You're essentially an independent contractor getting paid in huge, infrequent chunks with zero financial infrastructure to support long-term stability. Compare this to other sports where 78% of NFL players face financial stress or bankruptcy within 2 years of retirement, or 60% of NBA players going broke within 5 years. Athletes across the board struggle financially, but boxers face unique vulnerabilities. Then there's the exploitation. Don King stands as the most documented case of promoter theft in boxing history. Tyson sued King for $100 million, claiming King illegally took up to 50% of his earnings. They eventually settled with King paying $14 million. Fernando Vargas lost $500,000 to an embezzlement scheme run by his own manager, who went to prison for 9 years. Thomas Hearns earned $40 million in his prime and faced foreclosure while owing the IRS over $1 million in back taxes. Boxers also hemorrhage money through an inability to say no. You're tough enough to trade punches with killers in the ring, but family and friends come asking for loans they'll never repay. You're surrounded by people whose livelihood depends on you fighting, so everyone has an incentive to push you back into the ring even when your body is screaming to stop. Tyson kept pet tigers. His jewelry and car collections became legendary. He bought property compulsively and maintained an entourage of dozens. This level of spending becomes normal when money flows in rapidly, but the flow always stops eventually. The problem is the lifestyle doesn't. Now imagine all of this happening while your brain is literally shrinking. Research shows that approximately 20% of professional boxers develop chronic traumatic brain injury during their careers. Up to 40% of retired professionals get diagnosed with symptoms of brain damage. The disease typically emerges 8 to 14.5 years after retirement and progresses slowly over decades. Retired fighters show measurable brain volume loss in the amygdala and hippocampus, the same areas affected by Alzheimer's disease. Movement abnormalities appear in 42% of cases. We're talking about Parkinsonism, slurred speech, difficulty swallowing. 17% of British professional boxers with careers in the 1930s through 1950s showed clinical evidence of chronic traumatic encephalopathy. What makes this particularly cruel is that the damage often doesn't show up immediately. You might feel fine when you retire. You might think you escaped unscathed. Then 10 years later, your speech starts slurring. Your memory begins failing. Your hands develop a tremor you can't control. But the physical and financial devastation only tells part of the story. There's a third element that destroys retired boxers, something that might be even more dangerous than brain damage or bankruptcy: identity death. For most boxers, their entire sense of self is wrapped around who they are in the ring. You've spent 20 years defining yourself by one thing: you're a fighter. That's not just what you do, it's who you are fundamentally. Your daily routine revolves around training schedules. Your social circle consists of gym partners and corner men. Your self-worth gets measured in wins and knockouts. Then overnight, that identity vanishes. The structure disappears first. No more 4 a.m. runs, no more sparring sessions, no more weigh-ins or fight camps. The calendar goes blank. You wake up on Tuesday with absolutely nothing you have to do, nowhere you need to be. Sounds like freedom, right? It's actually terrifying. That daily grind you complained about for years provided something crucial: purpose. Without it, many fighters describe feeling completely untethered, like they're floating through days that bleed into each other without meaning. The crowd noise stops. You went from thousands of people screaming your name to complete silence. From being the center of attention to being just another guy at the grocery store. Nobody recognizes you anymore. The younger generation coming up doesn't know who you were. You're not a champion. You're not even a has-been. You're invisible. Professional boxers face increased risk of mental health problems even during their careers, dealing with injury fears, weight cuts, contract negotiations, public scrutiny, and media pressure. But retirement amplifies everything. The adrenaline rush of competition is impossible to replicate in normal life. Many fighters spend years chasing that high through increasingly destructive behaviors. Some turn to substances. Others seek out dangerous situations just to feel something resembling the intensity they lost. The transition to civilian life hits differently when you're retiring in your 30s. Most people are hitting their career stride at that age. You're facing decades of life with your defining achievement already behind you. What do you do for the next 40 years? Some fighters get broadcasting gigs or coaching positions, but those opportunities are rare. The vast majority have to completely reinvent themselves in middle age with no transferable skills beyond knowing how to take a punch. Former British champion Gary Sykes spoke publicly about his struggles with bipolar disorder and how retirement made everything worse. The mania intensified. He'd battled alcoholism throughout his career, managing to stay sober 6 to 8 weeks before each fight, but otherwise stuck in cycles of benders. Without fights to train for, that anchor disappeared entirely. Irish fighter Aidan Walsh won Commonwealth Games gold in 2022, then immediately sank into depression so severe he had to step away for 12 months. He eventually returned with help from sport psychologists, but his story illustrates how even recent success provides zero protection against the identity crisis waiting on the other side. Boxing's culture of hypermasculinity makes seeking help nearly impossible. The show no weakness mentality breeds champions in the ring, but it's lethal outside it. You spent your entire career being told that vulnerability equals defeat. You built your reputation on being tough enough to absorb punishment without flinching. Admitting you're struggling with depression or anxiety feels like admitting you were never really strong to begin with. So fighters bottle everything up, which compounds the internal destruction. The fear of irrelevance becomes overwhelming. You're terrified people will forget you existed, that your achievements meant nothing, that you sacrificed your brain and body for temporary glory that evaporated the moment you stopped being useful. This fear triggers anxiety and despair that many fighters lack the tools to process. Now layer the financial stress on top of this psychological collapse. You're broke, your brain is damaged, and you have no idea who you are anymore. Leon Spinks went from earning millions to working at McDonald's and a YMCA. Joe Louis ended up as a greeter at Caesar's Palace. Wilfred Benitez lives in a wheelchair, dependent on government assistance and his sister's care. These aren't just financial failures, they're complete identity erasures. The physical symptoms of brain damage make the mental health crisis worse. When your speech starts slurring and your hands develop tremors, it's a constant reminder of what you've lost. You can't even tell the stories of your glory days without stumbling over words. The cognitive decline makes it harder to learn new skills or adapt to different careers. You're trapped in a deteriorating body with a failing mind, watching yourself become less capable every year. Depression impairs emotional regulation. The brain damage increases impulsivity. The financial stress creates constant anxiety. The identity loss removes your sense of purpose. This combination creates what researchers call a perfect storm. Retired boxers become vulnerable to addiction, severe mental health crises, and in tragic cases, suicide. You gave everything to boxing. You sacrificed relationships, education, long-term health, and financial security. You did it because you believed the glory was worth it, that being a champion meant something permanent. But championships don't last. The belt gets passed to someone younger and hungrier. The records get broken. The footage gets buried under new highlights. Within a generation, most fighters are completely forgotten, except as answers to trivia questions. You traded your future for a moment that the world has already moved past. The question nobody asks before stepping into that ring is simple. Was it worth it? And for most retired boxers staring at their reflection in a bathroom mirror at 3 a.m., unable to sleep because their brain won't stop misfiring, the answer becomes painfully clear. The sport takes everything and gives back nothing but scars, physical ones that you can see and neurological ones that slowly reveal themselves over decades. It promises immortality through glory but delivers obscurity and suffering. The cruelest part is that most fighters would do it all over again. Not because they're masochistic, but because in those brief moments under the lights, they felt alive in a way nothing else can replicate. That's the real trap. Boxing doesn't just destroy your body and bank account, it ruins you for normal life by showing you a peak of human experience you'll spend the rest of your days trying to recapture. Yeah, you can't go back to the ring, but you also can't move forward into a world that feels colorless by comparison. So you exist in this limbo, neither fully retired nor able to let go, watching your brain deteriorate while wondering if those cheers were worth the price you're still paying.